loves, and welcome back to another episode of Native Growth, the place where we audit our everyday beliefs, habits, and energies so we can better understand ourselves to intentionally create a life of love, peace, and joy one day at a time. I'm Lauren, and I'm so grateful you're here today. I think it's going to be a great episode today. I think it's something that a lot of people are really looking for right now. I feel like a lot of people have really experienced a lot of change, both internally and externally so far this year. And now, with some major lunations in this Aries season and eclipse season coming right around the corner next week, a lot of the foundations that we've laid internally are going to represent themselves as some pretty significant, albeit very positive and awesome changes coming up in the next couple of months and for the probably the rest of the year. It's all very exciting, but I do think that one thing that a lot of people struggle with is finding stability through changes. So that's what today's episode is all about. I'm pretty excited about it. We're going to talk about why stability and change are actually not two separate conditions or two separate states of being. We're going to talk a little bit about how the fight or flight response comes into play as we're going through seasons of change. And then we're going to wrap up with 5 key things that we can really lean into to help us feel more comfortable and confident in both the process of the change and then the outcome of the change, wherever it is that we land when we've kind of come out of our season of change. So we'll go ahead and get started today. Um, so again, stability and change are actually not two separate things, right? It's only in our perception, especially. I think it's more in our awareness that we feel as though we are unstable, unsafe, insecure when we're going through periods of change, right? It's not so much that, in our everyday lives that we're necessarily feeling this kind of like instability. It's mostly when we're in a season where there's a lot of change happening that we're like, oh, I feel unstable. And that's actually really not true at all, um, by virtue of the fact that change is actually happening all the time, right? Like, we're not the same person today that we were yesterday or the day before or 6 months ago or a year ago, right? Incrementally, we're changing all the time. It's only in our perception that things stay the same, right? So there's change that is still happening again in the everyday when we do already feel stable, when we feel like we're living in our comfort zone. And, so inversely, we certainly do have the ability to feel like we are stable and safe when we're going through change. And in fact, we actually are, right? Just from the perspective that most changes that we go through are actually not unsafe. Right? Like, we think that they are, but they're really not, right? Like, let's just say, for example, something happens to your car and it needs to go in the shop. Like, it's a change and it might be inconvenient for a time, but it's not life-threatening. You might lose your job, and that is a change that maybe you didn't expect, but it's not life-threatening, right? Like, these things are actually, um not creating a condition of instability or of a lack of safety. It's only in our maybe non-conscious perception and feeling that they are. So we really do, just from that kind of very basic perspective, we do actually have stability through change, whether we feel that way or not. Um, but I think that what happens a lot is that it's more so the primary example that I gave rather than the latter, right? That, like, most people feel like they're actually not really experiencing change on a day to day. I think it's more the perception that there is sameness from one day to another, that people feel like they're kind of living the same day over and over and over. I think that this happens a lot. I think that it's a little, maybe a bit less common for some of our younger generations than it maybe is for like my generation and older, perhaps. But what I found among people um, who do live this way, where they tend to kind of live that same day over and over again, what is really happening is they're having mentations while they're living this lifestyle, right? Like they might not be experiencing a whole lot of change, but they're changing internally in the idea that the things that they are becoming less and less happy with are taking up more and more of their mental emotional space, more of their energy, right? So what happens is they start to form these very regular meditations where they're like, man, I really wish I could just quit my job right now. Right. And they tend to, once that thought kind of creeps in, again, it becomes a mentation. It becomes a thing that is repeated internally in the mind, right? Or the thought like, I would rather be doing literally anything else right now. Like, I'm sure that there are lots of responsibilities and things that we all have to do. I'm sure there are things you can think of right now that you have to do, responsibilities you have to tend to in your daily life that you don't really like to do. And so you go like, I would rather be doing anything else right now. But there are some things that we dislike doing more than others, certainly, you know. So again, it's when it becomes a mentation that it starts to take up more of that space. Another example is, again, some of these like regular responsibilities we have to do, and then you think like, now I have to go do this stupid ass thing again. Like, I'm so sick of it. I'm so sick of having to do this thing. I'm so sick of having to go take care of whatever that is, right? So it's not just the mentations, right? The mentation is the thought. But we never just have the thought, we have the feeling attached to the thought. So think of your thoughts as kind of like the spark of energy, and then the feeling is the electricity. It's it's the energy that flows through you into your whole body when you are thinking the things that you're thinking, right? It's the feeling that's attached to that really is what sinks into your body and starts to kind of like make its bed in your body, right? And then, like I said, it's one of those things like where once it creeps in, sometimes it becomes more and more cyclical, more and more regular. Every time A happens, I think B, and then I feel C as a result, right? So it's it's this energy that flows through us that the universe hears, right? So we think these things and we feel these things, and then we're totally shocked when our car breaks down, when we lose our job, when our relationship fails, right? It's like we think these things all the time, and then we're so shocked when things start to move and change and crumble, and oftentimes we maybe have been so wrapped up in a cocoon of these kind of negative mentations, but then we're so shocked when we feel like our world is falling apart and things spiral out of control, right? Because we forget that the universe, that our creator is listening all the time and is always, albeit sometimes very incrementally, but creator is always moving in our lives to put changes in motion, whether we intended for them to happen or not, right? And again, sometimes these changes happen just incrementally, a little bit at a time. It's not always this big, like, well, I lost my job today, and that seems like a lot bigger than something like, oh, I stubbed my toe today, right? Um, but life is full of twists and turns and all kinds of things that we didn't expect, um, unanticipated events. And sometimes change happens very quickly, and sometimes a lot of change happens kind of seemingly all at once. And I would say that for the most part, humans don't necessarily handle that very well. we haven't we haven't been programmed to, right? We haven't exactly had generations of of ancestors behind us to be like, "Oh, well, when this happens, you don't need to get angry, you just need to do this. You don't need to get all in a tizzy, you just need to do that." And of course, everything is very situational and very individualistic, so I think that very much contributes to our feeling that we live in a very individualistic society where we can't lean on each other for things. But in any case, when changes happen, again, whether we really anticipated them or not, especially big changes, our fight or flight response kicks in, right? Our initial physiological response is like a fear-based response, right? And there are certainly times where the fight or flight response kicking in is a helpful thing, right? Like we need it to happen, right? Like if you were in a situation where there was a change in your environment that did become life threatening, then you need that fight or flight response to get your ass in gear, right? If you were a caveman, back in the day, and you're in your cave with your family, and then all of a sudden a tiger pokes its head around the corner, you need that fight or flight response to get your ass in gear to be like, all right, what are we going to do about this situation? Right? But a lot of the changes that we have in our modern day lives are not life threatening at all. Right? They're like, something happened to my car, something happened at work. I'm stuck in this meeting and I'm getting yelled at in front of God and everybody. It's like, we're our fight or flight response is responding usually to more changes in the environment than it really needs to. Again, because we're not programmed to deal with it. We don't necessarily always have the tools that we need to cope with it as well as we can. But also, um, um, I just lost it. Oh man, I'm feeling a little off today. I'm sorry, but we're just gonna move on, keep going. But like I said, most of the changes that we experience, they're not life threatening, right? But the same response, the same fight or flight physiological response is still initiated within our body. And so because the fight or flight response kicks in times where we can't fight or it's not appropriate to fight, certainly not in a very uh like animalistic way, right? And we can't necessarily run away either. Then that energy kind of gets like built up and it gets stuck in there. And so then our response to that energy is to try to just do something, right? Because we can't resolve a situation necessarily right in that moment, at least not to completion, that fear starts to turn into like this pit in our stomach where we feel worried. It turns into like a clenching in our jaw and a tightening of our temples where we feel this anxiety, right? Like we automatically feel the need to like, well, then I just got to go do something. I got to hurry up and do something right now. Like that energy is telling you that it's building up and it needs to go somewhere. And a lot of times, again, because we are we experience this in environments and in situations where we're not just going to go somebody and be like, I need to do something right now, and try to like channel that energy, then that it just keeps like moving all in our bodies and we get all like buzzing, right? And then we get all in our heads about whatever the change is. We get all like, well, what do I do now? How am I supposed to handle this? What direction am I supposed to go in? Right? Like it just turns into different kinds of mentations almost, right? And we just go like, well, what if, what if, what if? And we just don't even know what to do with ourselves. So, um, so I think that first and foremost, it's really helpful just to recognize that these are the mechanisms that are going on inside of our bodies and and within our energy, that this is kind of what's happening. And it's really important to keep in mind that energy is never created or destroyed, it only changes forms. So as soon as you feel any kind of distress or dis-ease, right? And if you're not able to cope with that in a way where you can yourself change it from something that feels very stressful and negative and heavy on your body into something that is much lighter, much easier to carry, something that makes sense and fulfills a purpose, right? Then like if we're not able to do that, then that energy it's just gonna keep moving on its own. So it's really important for us to practice a number of things so that we can kind of be able to, I would say, not just cope with change, whether that's something small that happens in a meeting, whether that's something big that happens in your life, like whatever that kind of change is, or whatever the stress is, or whatever the seemingly negative emotion is, right? Like even just I would say when it comes to coping with change, what it really comes down to is the inability to cope with emotions that make us feel uncomfortable, right? We so often let's see. I live in Wisconsin, and last week it was 60 degrees, and right now it's snowing, and I'm just like, this is silly. But anyway, um, squirrel moments. Um, but yeah, so think about, times when you've had like thoughts and feelings and you were like, I just don't want to deal with that right now. Even if it wasn't a conscious thought, I don't want to deal with that right now. Might have been a non-conscious, like I'm not doing that right now. That's not where I'm going right now. And so you turn on the TV or you scroll through your phone or you go play a video game. Like you do literally anything other than just meet with those thoughts and feelings right where you are right then, right? So a lot of these ideas here, they come down not only to the emotional level, but if you've listened to some of the other episodes previously, then especially the episode about having expectations, right? That's like a lot of these concepts. I think you'll see how they kind of go hand in hand with each other. So if you haven't listened to that episode, I highly recommend that you do. Another one of those episodes, actually, I think it's my top listened to episode. It's called "That Wasn't Supposed to Happen." A lot of these ideas harken back to that episode as well. Again, it's my top listened to episode, which I, I don't know, like I didn't anticipate that, but I'm super happy that people have listened to it a lot and that a lot more people have listened to it because it is, at least to me, like one of the biggest lessons that I've learned in my life. And so I'm grateful that the message is getting out to people and it's resonating. Okay, so when it comes to, again, not only coping with change, but coping with stress and just coping with different types of challenging emotions on the whole, I've come up with a short list of 5 things that I think that we can do not only during like specifically during times of change, but that we can really start to practice on a day to day, like things that really won't take you, a whole lot of time or a whole lot of effort physically or mentally, really. Um, things that are just like super, super easy, but also super incredibly impactful, right? So the first one, as I was starting to allude to before, is just having awareness, right? Just having awareness of what your cyclical regular mentations are, right? If you're finding that you're one of these people that's like, I would rather be doing literally anything else with my time right now than doing what I'm doing, and if you're saying that to yourself all the time when you are at work, in a relationship that you're in, if you're saying it all the time when you're having to like take care of certain things or certain people, right? Then it is really important that we start to become aware of those limitations because again, the universe is listening all the time, right? So what is it that you really want the universe to hear knowing that the universe or creator, God, whoever you want to call it, is constantly is constantly working to create change in your life according to what you think most about, right? So it's important that we not only become aware of our regular mentations and therefore what is causing us to have those mentations. It's also important that we consider what's on the opposite side of that, right? It's really important that we tap into the things that bring us the most gratitude and to what we truly desire to have in our life. Because if you would rather be anywhere else than at work right now, it's nothing for God to take your job away from you. But if what you really want is to have this other job instead, then we can focus on that and tell God that that's what you want instead, right? So then God knows, like, okay, I'm not just going to take this away from you, I'm going to replace it with something better. Right? Like, so it's helping us to have that directionality about it. Um, and there's another whole episode that I did all about like the power of gratitude. That episode is called Thank You. I did it a couple of episodes ago, and there's a lot more deeper dive to the power of gratitude there that I think is really helpful. So the second thing that we can do in coupling with um, in coupling with connecting more deeply with what really helps us to feel gratitude and what we truly desire is to just set those intentions, right? To not feel like it is selfish for you to want something different, to not feel like you're unworthy, to not feel like it's out of reach, right? It's to set your intentions and to know that impossible is nothing for a creator, right? It's absolutely not. And it's also things that you think might feel really out of reach right now are there. I mean, again, like it's nothing for God, right? So nothing is ever out of reach. And sometimes when you think things might, like, maybe you know that they're attainable, but you feel like it would take you forever to get there, if you just keep focusing on your gratitude and setting your intentions, and the best thing you can do here is not only setting your intention for your desire and your gratitude, but to also really feel into who is that version of me that has that thing, right? What we all truly desire at the end of the day is a level of freedom within each major area of our life, right? So if you have relationship freedom or love freedom, what does that version of you look like that has love freedom? What does it feel like to be that version of you? If you desire financial freedom, okay, what does that version of you look like? What does it feel like to have and why? Why do you want love freedom? Why do you want financial freedom? What is that version of you doing with that freedom? Right? So to really set not only your intentions in your mind, but to set your heart posture intentions. And and then just to really like kind of like keep your heart on those things, but then let it go and don't stress yourself out about trying to force yourself to move in that direction. Just trusting that, again, creator is always hearing you, creator is always feeling you, and creator is always moving things around according to what you think about and speak about most, right? So you don't even need to do anything other than just keep focused on those things and then just kind of allowing the rest of it to unfold after that. And I think another kind of big part that goes into it is the third thing here, which is very much inspired by this quote by Charlie Wardle that says, "A bird sitting on a tree doesn't fear the branch breaking because its trust lies not in the branch, but in its own wings." Right? So as you are continually giving more of your intention and your focus to that version of you that has what you desire to have, you automatically start building um, a level of wisdom, of um, what is the word I'm trying to say? like an IQ, I guess if I can say it like that. Like, so if you're desiring financial freedom and you focus on that version of you and you're focusing on building that version of you that has financial freedom, then inherently, naturally, you are going to start focusing on building your financial IQ, right? You're gonna start learning more about it. You're gonna start implementing some different practices and strategies in order to help you get to that financial freedom. And that old adage, like God helps those who help themselves, right? That's what that means. You go like, okay, this is the version of me that I desire to be. This is what I desire to have in this level of freedom in this area of my life. And so I'm building this IQ in that area. I'm building these practices towards this thing in that area. And then God sees that and it's like, yeah, that's fucking awesome. Let me give you a pump draft. Right? Like I'm gonna help push you along. Let me give you a tailwind. Right. And so that's really how we start to see what would have maybe in your own mind taken you so much longer to achieve, like that time frame starts to really collapse in on itself. And and it's it is wild to me how fast people can really start achieving things that they initially thought would have taken them so much longer to achieve when they just get clear on this and just focus on it and trust that where the mind goes the energy flows within and without, right? So that's that's a huge part of it, because as you're setting your intentions and building that EQ and building those practices and kind of flexing those different kinds of muscles, right? The more you start to trust yourself, the more you start to trust in Creator to get you there. So if the branch breaks, it doesn't matter, right? Because your trust was never in the branch. You transferred that trust to yourself instead of to any external situations that may or may not arise, right? Okay, so the fourth thing that kind of goes along with this a little bit, at least in terms of something that you can do that, again, is not really going to take you a whole lot of time or a whole lot of effort, but is very powerful when it's done with consistency, is just to have like a daily practice of some kind, right? And there are so many different kinds of daily practices that you can have that will contribute to finding more of that mental emotional balance and kind of like mind heart congruency. So for example, meditation is a big one. And I know for me, like I I do practice different types of sitting meditation and lying meditation, sometimes with some tonal vibrations, especially like 396 hertz, um, 528 hertz, the heart chakra tone. 432 hertz is the same frequency at which the earth is rotating on its axis. Um, so listening to that helps you to tune into the frequency of Mother Earth herself, brings a whole lot of balance and healing to the system as a whole. And I can get behind all of that, but truly for me, meditation is really it's not about clearing your mind. It's not about even necessarily like trying to be in silence or trying to force your body to be still. Like there's certainly a great value to that, but for me, like I have found that the most effective form of meditation and the form of meditation that I can practice the most sustainably in my life is a moving meditation. So I practice um, cleaning. Cleaning my house is a moving meditation, and you can put on like those frequencies or your music or whatever. It doesn't matter. Like anything that helps you to, again, as I was saying, how like the electricity of those feelings, they can get stuck in your body, right? So something that is moving your body is helping that energy to come out of your body so it's not stuck in there. Something that is helping you to breathe, right? So that through your breath work with your movement, especially if you're doing things where you're moving in congruency with your breath. So if you're doing yoga, qigong, tai chi is one of my favorite things. I've practiced it for oh god, like over 12 years now. I've practiced tai chi, like a really long time, because it's again like one of my favorite forms other than cleaning my house. It's one of my favorite forms of moving meditation. It's super powerful. um, Yoga, I love doing yoga as well, but doing these things not only help the energy to move, avoid it to get stuck. Again, it really helps you to have that like mind, heart, body congruency, so everything is aligned, right? And it also really helps you to slow down, especially tai chi and qigong. I do find sometimes that yoga, although I love yoga, I do find that sometimes it can move a little bit quickly, and then I feel like I'm not able to take full breaths with my movement, and then I don't feel like I've gotten, I don't know, that same level of calmness or whatever, but just the ability to slow down in a practice translates out into the real world. So then the when you practice it, even if you practice tai chi or qigong, let's say for like 20 minutes twice a week, right? It's not asking a lot of yourself, but almost within the first week or two, like it happens so automatically, you find that the practice of slowing down, breathing more deeply, moving your body with your breath with intention, that starts to translate out into your real life. And then all of a sudden, you start to notice that you're able to face challenging emotions, challenging circumstances or situations, change. You're able to face all different kinds of these, what would otherwise be really, um, just challenging situations. You face them with so much more ease because you're just like, yeah, okay, like you have that's how you truly reprogram your entire system away from fight or flight and more for peace. That's like a huge one right there. I would also say that as far as a daily practice go that doesn't take very long is journaling, especially like if you're really working on having that mindfulness of your meditations, and then you maybe go home after work, wind down for a little bit, and then journal about some of the meditations that you have. Just by starting to write them down and get it out, it helps you to think it through. It helps you to get to the root of those mentations, and it helps you to see with clarity what you need to do about it on your own. It's a really great self coaching tool that I absolutely love. And I've had worked with many of my coaching clients who have started journaling. And in the beginning, I think that a lot of times they're like, yeah, like I used to journal a little bit, but I don't really know what I'm trying to say. But just by giving them the direction of, hey, just focus on your mentations or focus what is taking up like the most space in your mind right now, they're like a week or two later, their minds are totally blown by how much clarity they have on the situation. And and that clarity is the precursor to compassion. And if you remember the episode on true love, right? Compassion is not only the willingness to relieve suffering, it's the ability to relieve suffering, right? So that clarity is the precursor to the compassion, which is part of how people practice true love for themselves and for each other, right? So it's so these things are so they seem like so little, they don't take a lot of time or effort, but they're so powerful, guys. And the last one I have here is simply that you can just supplement these things with nutrition, right? Like there is such a thing as brain food. I'm sure we've all heard about brain food, right? And what we are learning so much more now with modern science and modern technologies is that we actually have more neurons in our gut than we do in our brain, right? Like for a long time, a lot of scientists and people have called your gut like the second brain, and it's obviously why we have like the gut feeling. Like there's a certain level of intuition and movement in our neural network in our gut that we still don't fully understand, but we can encourage that and encourage our own mental emotional balance by supporting those systems, by supporting our neural networks, by supporting our um, again, the fight or flight response is a physiological thing. So it's not just a mental, it's a result of chemicals and hormones that get released in the body. So we can support the balance of our system by supporting it with different kinds of nutrients like adaptogens, right? Like ashwagandha, ginger, turmeric, adaptogenic mushrooms like reishi, and turkey tail and lion's mane, right? Like if you've never heard of these things, like they're pretty available now, especially in health food stores and online. Um, I I have like a multi mushroom supplement that I take at least once a day by a brand called Myco Renew. But I've also heard that Forager's Kingdom, which has it more in like a liquid tincture form. I've heard really great things about that as well. But something I highly recommend, absolutely. Prebiotics and probiotics, right? And um, and then of course like fruits and veggies that have more nutrients and fiber, like all of those things work together to support your microbiome, your gut bacteria, which also supports the lining in your gut, which is like the true home of the vast majority of the neural networks that live within our gut. It's in the lining of the gut, right? So all of these ways that we can nutritionally support that are ways that we can therefore support the balance of our hormones and our chemical reactions within our body. Also, flaxseed oil. I know fish seed oil has been, a huge thing for a very long time, and there's nothing wrong with that. Fish is definitely an awesome brain food, all different types of fish, but especially like fish that are higher in fats actually because the fats in fish are good fats, right? They're omegas. But I like flaxseed oil as like a regular supplement because it is the most well balanced between omega 3, 6, and 9, right? Whereas you see with a lot of fish and fish oil, it's mostly omega 3, and then you don't really get as much omega 6 or 9. And there is such a thing as having too much omega 3, actually. You can actually have some different kinds of almost like allergic type responses to it. So I like a really good quality flaxseed oil supplement because it's got that balance of the omegas, and again, all of that is very supportive for not only your neurons and your brain, it's also very supportive for all of the linings, right? So, like each of your neurons has a lining around it called the myelin sheath, right? And that's all made of like very thin types of like fats and stuff. Um, so making sure that you're getting enough like flaxseed oil and stuff, uh, it supports the 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 casing around your neurons, the casing around your heart, the casing around your lungs, like those very kind of soft tissues. So all of that is very helpful, and those are the 5 things. I know the last two kind of went off on little tangents, but those are the 5 things that I think are just super easy to do to really support yourself, not only during times of change, but just to support the balance of your stress and the balance of your mental emotional life on the whole when you really adapt them and practice them regularly. And as I was saying earlier, this is like, I'm really excited to tell you guys about this. So, as I was saying earlier, Tai Chi is something that I've been practicing for a very long time. And if you're not familiar, Tai Chi is an ancient Chinese practice that is rooted in Qigong. And Qigong means energy work. Qi, um, CHI or QI, depending on which region of China or Japan it comes from, is pronounced Qi or Qi, and that is the word for energy, and then gong is the word for work. So qi gong means energy work. So it's when we work with our energy in a way that, like I said, is moving meditation, right? So again, it's very supportive for mind, heart, body congruence. It's super supportive for redirecting energy and emotions. It's also super supportive for helping to channel the energy of different emotions into something that, again, is lighter or easier to experience. So when you feel that pit in your stomach, like you're worried, you become aware of that and then you go, "Oh, I'm not worried. Actually, I'm just excited." Right? It's like a very similar type of feeling and both exist in the solar plexus chakra. So it can be really, it can kind of like screw with you a little bit, but this practice helps you to have that awareness and the ability to kind of transmute it. So instead of feeling worried, you feel excited. um, when energy starts to, kind of get buzzing in your body, and then, maybe in a situation, I guess, especially of change, where you might be like, well, what if something bad happens, right? It helps you to, again, have that awareness and to be like, wait a minute, though. I'm not living in the future. I'm living right now. So not only am I bringing my presence back to the present moment so I can appreciate everything that I have right now. But I'm going to flip the script on that and I'm going to say, what if something amazing happens? Right. So, um, so it takes these situations that exist outside of ourselves and inside of ourselves, these thoughts and feelings, and maybe some really challenging memories that we might have, and it helps us um, to take what felt like a challenge or something that used to make us feel really stuck, and it helps us to move out of that place of stuckness and help us find really easy solutions that are available to us all the time, and to really touch the energy of ease and flow and freedom. I will also say about Tai Chi that it's a phenomenal, very low impact workout. So it's very gentle on your joints, which is great for me because my joints aren't phenomenal anymore. Um, but it's very great low impact workout that is simultaneously very good for gently toning the muscles and working on the balance and the posture, gently engaging the core muscles, especially, and the muscles up and down your spine. So it does all of that while decreasing inflammation and bringing you back to a place of balance and peace. And because I've practiced it so long and it's something that I have loved doing, I did used to teach it in a very kind of like formal way. So I learned it as a martial art. And so I trained in a martial arts school. I also trained in Kung Fu. So I was dual training in Kung Fu and Tai Chi. And so I used to teach Kung Fu and Tai Chi in a very formal way. But I really feel, like this podcast and like the other episodes that I've put out in my podcast, I very much feel like it could it could be taken out of its formality and put more into kind of like the core practices that make it the most useful for the people who are really seeking all of those things, that are seeking the mind heart body congruency, that are seeking the low impact workout, that are seeking to, move with breath and intention, that are seeking to find more peace and gratitude and freedom, that are seeking to balance their hormones and their chemical responses in the fight or flight system, and in your stressful situations on the whole, right? Like, it's so good for all of these things. It's helped me so much, and it's helped me so much on my path of clearing a lot of my mental emotional clutter so that I can focus on manifesting the life of my dreams, which is what I'm living now. And so, short story long, I'm really excited that I'm going to start offering it in this way that is less formal and more approachable. And I'm going to do that live on my YouTube channel. My handle is at Native Growth. So I'm going to start doing this every Monday at 6 p.m. starting this coming Monday, which is the 8th, Monday, April 8th at 6 p.m. Central Time. So if you're in Central Time, hopefully that's, a good enough time that you'll be, done working and all that stuff. So it'll be live, but I'll keep it posted, up on there. So as we go through from one week to another, you'll be able to go back and keep, practicing. If you've missed it, you'll be able to go back and watch it and practice it with us. They're not going to be real long. I'm thinking like 30 minutes at a time because, for one thing, it doesn't take a long time to have a big impact. You just don't need to do a whole lot more than that. But also because that's a very digestible amount of time for people. I recognize that your time and your energy are currency. They're very, very valuable and you need to invest them very wisely. So I'm going to put a lot of impact in a small amount of time for you. All right, so that's it. It's 4:44, and thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for spending this time nurturing your mind and your heart and your soul with me today. Today's episode is brought to you by absolutely no one. You don't hear any commercials at all on this show because I don't really think you want to. So I've chosen not to seek any paid sponsorships. I'm 100% listener supported, and your donations really help me to stay that way so we can continue just allowing these episodes to flow and be raw and real without any pauses or commercials along the way. So you can keep that ball rolling by clicking the link for donations in the show notes. Thanks again so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, please make sure that you subscribe and share this podcast. Please go ahead and shoot me an email or a message on Instagram with some of your key takeaways or comments that you'd like to share. I always love hearing those. And yeah, just pass it on, share this podcast so that together we can raise the vibration and the consciousness of the universe. Remember, it's all coded within you. Your power, your authenticity, your love, your native growth. Thanks so much, guys. I love you. See you later. Mwah.